Father dotes on his illegitimate child, mother favors her adopted daughter, they're in a competition, and no one wants me. On the eve of the college entrance exam, they suddenly arranged to see me together. I thought they had finally remembered their parental duties and wanted to cheer me up, yet upon their arrival, I saw each of them pull out a voluntary relinquishment of inheritance rights agreement, demanding my signature. Turns out, they remembered I was about to come of age. But they only feared that I would compete with their beloved children for the family fortune. I sat on the sofa, watching my parents' indifferent expressions. In the end, I could only whisper, "Then, can you give me money?" I needed money, lots and lots of it. My parents had long stopped supporting me, each thinking the other would provide me with living expenses. From the second year of high school, my previous savings ran out. I went hungry many times, often relying on plain water to fill my stomach. During those times when hunger made my vision blur, the desire for money outweighs love. I want a lot of money, enough to support me through college, with a place to live and food to eat. My parents were very surprised by this, especially my mother, who raised her eyebrows as if she disapproved of my mercenary demeanor, especially since beside her sat her beloved adopted daughter, Kathy. The girl who had been carefully nurtured by my mother for years, now resembling a true young lady of noble birth. As my words trailed off, Kathy also turned her gaze toward me, her demeanor reserved and elegant. Without saying a word, just by looking at me, I could sense her disdain and contempt. Fortunately, my mother didn't continue to press me further. Her focus remained on my father, as she spoke to him sarcastically. "What's the matter? Didn't you always say Nora was your one and only little princess? Now you've let your princess fall into poverty. 50,000, you'd casually give away more than that to just anyone." After saying this, she clicked her tongue twice and sighed. Nora, a true heiress, now has a vision that can't even compare to my Kathy. This is all because you've been such a responsible father. Mother reached out and patted Kathy beside her, proudly displaying her masterpiece to father. Not once did she consider whether I, her biological daughter, would feel embarrassed hearing these words, and father's expression darkened as well, with Albert, my illegitimate half-brother, sitting beside him. Over the past 2 years, Kathy, the adopted daughter, has completely outshone Albert, the illegitimate son, in both upbringing and academic performance. Every time their mother flaunts Kathy's excellence, it feels like a slap in the face to him and Albert. At this moment, the father once again understood her sarcasm. In a fit of anger, he sneered and spoke to her word by word. "If you, as her mother, could heartlessly abandon the child from your own womb, why should I care about her? Nora is fundamentally ruined. I can't save her." A mocking smile curled at the corner of the mother's lips as she glared at the father, her eyes piercing through him with resentment. Who made her have a father who would cheat? With that kind of bloodline, she's doomed to never improve. Sarah, do you think you're any better? Jack, open your eyes and see. I could raise a child as good as Kathy, while you could only produce a wastrel like Albert. That proves the problem was never with me. In the end, it's your genes that are lacking. You're inferior to Frank from the very foundation. By the end, the anger could no longer be contained. In front of me, the two started arguing again. Trembling, I wanted to bury my head deeply as I used to. But I couldn't. I knew they would walk away after venting their anger, leaving me alone in the mess they created, with no one to care. I don't want to go hungry anymore, so I stopped the war with a scream. "If you want to fight, wait until you give me the money to go out and fight," I said, slowly stretching out my hand toward them, my open palm still damp with sweat. "I want to go to college. Each of you, give me 500,000. As I said this, my whole body was trembling. I don't know if it's because of nervousness or excitement. This is the first time I've stood up to them. I know that if I don't fight for it now, I'll never have the chance to fight for it again. Dad has always favored his illegitimate child, the product of his affair with his first love from his youth. He was a boy just half a year younger than me, before his existence was exposed. We had always been seen by outsiders as the happiest family of 3. Father was successful in his career. Mother was gentle and virtuous, and the daughter was innocent and lovely. Everything changed the year I turned 15. Father brought home the boy named Albert. It was only then that Mother learned that over the years, Father had practically established a new family elsewhere. From time to time, under the pretext of business trips, he would go to the neighboring city to live with them, enjoying the sweet life of a family of 3. But as Albert grew older, The first love was not satisfied with her child being just an illegitimate offspring. She wanted to bring the child to live in H city, claiming it would bring them closer to the father, but he refused. Yet, the first love wouldn't give up. She secretly followed with the child, but they met with a car accident along the way. That woman used her own life as the stepping stone for Albert to enter my home. When father first brought him back, he didn't even dare to meet mother's eyes. Deep down, he didn't really think his mistake was that outrageous. He just believed showing weakness would earn him understanding. But mother, who had always been gentle and considerate, went berserk on the spot. She was adamant, cursing both her father and Albert, as well as that first love that had nearly torn her and her father apart years ago. At first, father would still coax mother in a humble tone, saying, "Albert's birth mother is already dead, she can't bother you anymore." But later, mother still refused to let it go, and so he lost his temper too. Father shoved mother to the ground, pointing at her nose and yelling, "Why are you being so unreasonable? This is the first time I can remember my parents fighting," and it lasted for a whole year. In the end, they still couldn't reach a consensus. Throughout that year, the more my mother made a scene, the more my father felt guilty about his first love and Albert. In the end, even the last trace of his guilt was worn away. Standing before his hysterical mother, he calmly uttered those words, "Let's get a divorce." In the end, the divorce never happened. Over the years, the two families had become deeply intertwined in business, nearly inseparable. A divorce between the parents would have left both families severely damaged, but mother wasn't willing to swallow this humiliation either. So soon enough, she also brought home a child. The daughter of her childhood sweetheart. That man was also mother's first love. In her youth, she had once believed she would naturally marry her childhood sweetheart. Later, my father appeared, viewing that uncle named Frank as the greatest threat. The relationship between the two had always been very strained. Even after my parents got together, my father felt quite jealous over that man. Later, Frank also got married, but divorced not long after, with the woman leaving him a child. After that, he had to go abroad for a few years, but his daughter Kathy still needed to stay in the country to take the college entrance exam. It was at this time that my mother appeared and naturally took Kathy in as her goddaughter, bringing her home to raise. I've seen photos. Kathy looks very much like Frank, equally tall and fair-skinned, with striking features, but faced with that face so similar to Frank's, my father couldn't muster a pleasant expression. Mother knew this made him unhappy. But the more unhappy he became, the happier she felt. Another year passed in a tug-of-war as agonizing as a dull knife cutting flesh. They lived under the same roof, competing fiercely to lavish affection on their own children. They were determined to prove that their child was superior to the others. But Albert was truly disappointing. Upon learning that his biological father was actually a CEO, he stopped being as considerate as before. He demanded only the best in food, clothing, and daily necessities. Not only did he act domineering at home, but he also put on airs as a young master at school. His popularity is as poor as his grades, always making his biological mother laugh at him. To this, the mother was utterly delighted, saying that men who cheat carry inherently inferior genes. She also cursed Albert, calling him the son of a cheating man and a mistress, destined to be scum in the future. The father was not to be outdone either. They were the two people in the world who knew each other best, so when it came to counterattacks, they naturally knew each other's weak spots. Her father mocked her, saying that since Kathy's biological mother was still alive, she was rushing to be a mother to someone else. If that person were to reconcile with Frank in the future, my mother would surely end up losing both the person and the money. Thus, both sides were provoked and began a new round of arguments. But in truth, this problem had a solution from the very beginning. My grades were even better than Albert's, even better than Kathy's. I was gentle and friendly with my classmates, and everyone at school liked me. I also loved my mother deeply, and once, I wanted to be the one who would protect her until the very end in this world. Yet, when faced with me, a person who carries half of each of their blood, they silently chose to ignore me. Once, I was the fruit of their love, the little princess they both cherished in the palms of their hands. Now, they are no longer willing to be kind to me, because being kind to me feels like bowing to each other. Ignoring is the best way to handle it. So for those 6 months, even though I lived in my own home, I couldn't eat enough or sleep well. Those two outsiders freely took everything I had. My bedroom had long been converted into Kathy's music room. Albert complained noisily, resentful that I had lived better than him in the past. Thus, the gifts my father had once bought for me were handed over to him one by one. Eventually, I became so desperately hungry that I couldn't even sell any jewelry to cover living expenses. There is nothing, no love, and no money. Now, they even want me to voluntarily sign a waiver of inheritance rights for the sake of their own treasures. Clearly, before coming here, I secretly held on to hope in my heart. I thought they had finally noticed me, noticed my outstanding grades and the natural love a child has for them. With the college entrance exams approaching, they called me here, perhaps intending to give me a surprise or cheer me on. I carried a secret joy in my chest, tidied myself up, and walked over to them. What awaited me, however, were two cold contracts. Sign it, my parents commanded with icy voices. While I stood frozen in place, chilled to the bone, in that moment, countless memories flooded my mind. I remembered the love they once had for me. I recalled even more those countless unknown deep nights when I curled up in a corner, crying alone. Tears soaked my test papers. I bit down on the pen cap, stifling my sobs, swallowing all my grievances until I could continue writing my exercises. In that moment, I finally realized, the parents who used to call me baby with such tenderness, who would have given me all the beauty in the world, were gone. I can only love myself. I have to move forward alone, go to university, and travel to far, far away places. They don't want me, they want Albert and Kathy. Then, I don't want them either. Facing my current resolute demand for money, the first to show a change in expression was Mom. She scrutinized me, trying to detect some clue from my face. I met her gaze openly in return. My expression held neither the coquetry of the past nor the pleading of later years. Nor was it like a child making a fuss over no candy just to get an adult's attention. I just really want money. I don't want anyone but money. Are you resenting us? As if just realizing my presence, Mom pursed her lips and instinctively turned her face away to avoid my gaze. Rarely, she actually acknowledged that I, as a human being, have emotions too, and was even willing to explain herself to me. Today's matter is indeed too much for you, she said. Blame your father. He was the one who first had this illegitimate child, and now he wants to leave everything to him, not giving you a single penny. I had no choice. You're his daughter, and if I left the property to you, he'd find a way to take it all. Nora, you have to understand me. Upon hearing this, the father sitting across from her slammed the table and stood up, pointing at her face in fury. Stop slandering me in front of our daughter. At least I left the property to my own flesh and blood. Albert is, after all, Nora's own brother. But you, Song Qingya, you're using our family's money to support an outsider's daughter. You're the one who's truly lost your mind. What? You can take care of your first love's son, but I can't take care of my first love's daughter. The mother forced a smile and retorted sharply. However much you spend on that woman's son, I'll spend the same on brother Frank's daughter. If you hadn't interfered back then, Kathy would have been born from me. At this point, she suddenly fell silent, casting a guilty glance in my direction. Seeing my expression remain blank, she quietly let out a sigh of relief. I don't want to hear your meaningless arguments. If you want to fight, do it later. I spoke almost numbly. Give me the money first. After that, you can argue about bastards or whatever you want. Money, money. Money, that's all you care about. How did I end up with such a shameless child? As if provoked by my indifferent attitude, my father turned his fury toward me, pointing a trembling finger at my face. I didn't get angry. I just kept holding out my hand. Give me the money, and then you can pretend I was never born. Laughter came from behind me. It was my mother. She seemed utterly delighted, clapping her hands and laughing so hard she nearly doubled over. She said, Jack, you're not human. Even your own daughter won't acknowledge you anymore. This is your karma. She laughed exaggeratedly, tears welling up in the corners of her eyes. Kathy, standing nearby, quickly stepped forward to support her, pulling out a tissue to gently wipe her eyes while softly calling out, Godmother. Then, she turned around and glared angrily at her father, saying, Don't you dare bully her. The sound seemed to wake her up, and her expression calmed down, her gaze at Kathy filled with tenderness. My eyes fell on their overlapping hands, watching as my mother's palm gently patted the back of Kathy's hand. She used to do the same thing when comforting me, and now, she was using the same gesture to be someone else's mother. 500,000 is not much to them, yet they seemed deaf to my words, solely intent on defeating each other. In the past, I would have been terrified by their quarrels, crying uncontrollably. Now, I just find it irritating. Whether it was the heartwarming scene of the birth mother and Kathy showing mother-daughter affection, or the look of utter disgust on the birth father's face when he glanced over, outside the window, the sky grew darker, yet no one made a move. I was starting to feel hungry. When pushed to the brink of hunger, bloodlust rises, and humanity fades. So, when Albert, standing behind my father, leaned out and skillfully gave me the double middle finger gesture, I immediately smashed the glass on the table. The sound of shattering glass startled both sides. Without hesitation, I picked up a shard and strode toward Albert. Before Albert could react, the shard of glass was already pressed against his neck. I'm frail and don't have much strength to restrain him, so when he tried to struggle, I simply cut his skin. Blood gushed out, and finally, my father calmed down, speaking to me in a gentle voice. Nora, calm down first, don't hurt your brother. A pang of bitterness rose in my chest, but it was quickly overshadowed by hunger. I knew my eyes were reddening, yet I still smiled at him and said, "Give me the money now, or I won't sign that agreement. I'll also find a way to kill both you and Albert and inherit your fortunes." Mom, seeing this, was about to mock me, but I cut her off. "And you, if you try to cheat me out of the money, I'll spread the story at school about Kathy stealing someone else's mother. I'll make sure your perfectly raised princess can never hold her head up again." Mom's smile froze on her face, as if she hadn't expected such deep resentment from me. Her eyes locked onto mine, and she spoke almost in disbelief. "Nora, are you threatening me, or what?" The trembling voice seemed to squeeze through clenched teeth. I tried to steady my breathing but couldn't suppress my sarcasm. With a cold laugh, I said, "I don't trust you. Even buying out your own daughter's inheritance rights for 500,000 took endless haggling. Neither of you is any good." In the end, I still got those two sums of money, 2 bank cards, each containing 500,000. Albert turned around and kicked me the moment I let go of him. "Bastard." He spat at me viciously. I fell to the ground in pain, but still lunged forward immediately, driving the shard of glass in my hand deep into his calf. A pig-slaughtering wail erupted as Albert collapsed in agony, clutching his leg while snot and tears streamed down his face. Father hurried over to take his precious son away, but not before turning to scold me with bitter disappointment. "You're just like your mother. Both of you are lunatics." I endured the stomach pain, took several deep breaths to calm myself, and then tremblingly grasped the dropped bank card firmly back into my hand. No matter what, at least I secured my tuition for the 4 years of university. Finally, I grasped a glimmer of hope for the future. Throughout the entire process, my birth mother stood by, watching coldly. Perhaps it was because of the words I had just retorted to her, and she tacitly agreed that I should learn a lesson. It wasn't until she saw me gasping in pain, trying and failing several times to push myself up from the ground with my hands, that she finally walked over, crouched down in front of me, and gently wiped my disheveled face with a handkerchief. When she saw me avoiding her hand, it froze mid-air, trembling slightly without her realizing. After a long while, I finally heard her voice. "Nora, you resent me now, don't you? Think about it. How could I ever truly abandon you when I loved you so much before?" It had been so long since I last heard her say she loved me, but the pity was, I didn't believe a word of it anymore. When I remained silent, she continued on her own. "This is only temporary. If I don't stay firm, I'll lose to your father. He'll use you to control me for the rest of my life." "Nora, you wouldn't want me to bow my head to him either, would you?" She looked at me, her eyes shimmering with hope, hoping to hear words of understanding or comfort from my lips. I pressed my lips together, confronting her with silence. In the end, she stood up with disappointment on her face and, supported by Kathy, slowly walked away. Before leaving, she turned back one last time. "Believe it or not, you were once the daughter I loved the most. Just endure a little longer, Nora. I'll make it up to you properly in the future." That day, I used the money I got from cutting ties with them to have a full meal. After eating my fill, I went to a hotel and slept soundly. 3 days later, I went to take the college entrance exam feeling refreshed and full of energy. Before entering the exam hall, I saw my father in a suit, handing Albert a stationery bag while reminding him to stay calm. Albert looked impatient, shouting that he would inherit his father's company anyway, so what did it matter how well he did on the exam? Father was clearly angered, his face darkening. but he held back his temper due to the occasion. At that very moment, Mother, dressed in a cheongsam and holding flowers, walked past them ostentatiously with Kathy, then stopped nearby and deliberately boasted, "Relax. Your teacher told me specifically that as long as you perform normally, getting into a top-tier university is guaranteed." The words clearly stung Father, his expression growing increasingly grim. Mother was feeling quite pleased with herself. Another voice chimed in, "Study hard for the exams, understand, you're our school's top candidate for Tsinghua and Peking University. Just maintain your performance, and you can choose any university, domestic or international." Following this exaggerated voice, they all turned their heads and then saw me, the one being carefully protected by the teachers. "Good child, you're the treasure of all our school's teachers. Anyone with any sense knows to cherish you. Go on, when you achieve great success, even your homeroom teacher will bask in your glory." The homeroom teacher stood before me, beaming with a smile. Her peripheral glance swiftly swept past, catching sight of my parents' awkward expressions, before she contentedly patted my shoulder and casually flipped out the collar I had tucked into my clothes. The motion was practiced and natural, exuding care. She felt more like a mother to me. All being adults, my parents naturally understood the veiled implications in the teacher's words. Father snorted coldly and turned away. Mother, however, after a moment of silence, approached with the bouquet of flowers in her arms. She wanted to say something but fell silent upon seeing me turn my face away. After a long pause, she finally managed to utter, "Do well on your exam." When I didn't respond, her voice carried a hint of grievance as she said, "Come home after the exams are over. There's no such thing as a mother and daughter who become true enemies in this world. Mom said she'll make it up to you, and she will. Come home, and Mom will throw you a celebration banquet, and by the way, help you consider schools." She wanted to say more, but Kathy called her away with a "Godmother" from behind. Kathy was about to enter the exam hall, and she went to see her off personally. By the time she turned back, I had already gone in, leaving only my back to her. 2 days later, the exams were over. For the last one, I stayed until everyone had left before exiting the exam hall. As expected, the only one waiting for me outside was my homeroom teacher, smiling warmly. The homeroom teacher stepped forward and wrapped an arm around me, as if afraid I'd be upset. She spoke up first. She said my mother had waited for me, but perhaps had something urgent and left first. When someone's life takes a turn, those around them can't help but notice the signs. And as I fell from heaven into hell, my homeroom teacher was the first to understand my family's situation. I remember, she once tried to visit my home for a parent-teacher meeting. And after I fainted from hunger in class, she privately attempted to contact my parents countless times. In the end, all she got was, "Mind your own business." If it weren't for the head teacher's frequent support these 3 years, I might not have made it this far. Even now, she still tries to comfort me. I gave her a smile. I wanted to tell her I didn't care about these things anymore, but some words, once spoken, lack conviction. I opened my phone. Kathy had just updated her social media. It was a post from the mall nearest to home, a 9-square grid of different designer bags. The caption read, "Mom said I've worked hard and deserve a nice reward. I roughly know what their upcoming itinerary will be. My birth mother will take her shopping for clothes and jewelry. Then they'll enjoy an exquisite dinner together, and after returning home, they'll chat about warm mother-daughter topics." I've seen these scenes countless times in Kathy's social media posts. There was a time when I would secretly browse through Kathy's shared life updates over and over again, like a shadowy little mouse. Even though I knew Kathy was deliberately showing off to me, I still clicked on those pictures, scrutinizing and analyzing them bit by bit, deluding myself into piecing together fragments of clues that might reveal the love my mother once had for me. Now, everything is let go, without hesitation. I blocked all accounts of Kathy Albert's biological parents. Then, in an unnoticed corner, I also posted a moment on my social media. It was the longevity noodles my homeroom teacher took me to eat after the exam ended. "Happy birthday." I told myself that from now on, my life would be my own. That night, I unexpectedly received a call from my birth mother. After answering, I didn't rush to speak. When no sound came from me, the breathing on the other end gradually grew heavier. Finally, just as I was about to hang up, I heard her cautiously ask, "Nora, are you still mad at Mom?" She said that an uncle I had added before saw my social media post and asked her why I didn't invite them to my 18th birthday party. I'm sorry, Mom was too busy and forgot about it. Come home first, and I'll make it up to you later, okay? For once, her voice softened noticeably. Busy taking Kathy shopping. The moment the words left my mouth, even I was startled by my own coldness. I added, if you really want to make it up to me, you can just give me the cash equivalent of the gift. That would be more practical. What kind of talk is that? Who would just have a bowl of noodles with their boundaryless homeroom teacher for their 18th birthday celebration and call it a day? My birth mother's dissatisfied voice came through, but this time I hung up before she could finish. I might not care about the money, but I don't want to hear anyone badmouth my homeroom teacher in front of me. Before the exam results came out, I stayed in the school dormitory the whole time. This is the extended accommodation specially approved for me by the grade level. For the entire summer vacation, as long as I wanted, I could stay at school, but when the homeroom teacher heard about it, she immediately said no. When summer vacation comes, there'll be no water or electricity. You won't even be able to take a shower. By the end of the summer, you'd turn into a wild person. When you go to college, no one would even recognize you. Just like that, she firmly packed my luggage and took me back to her own home. Thank you. As I stepped into the small bedroom that had clearly been tidied with care, I found myself momentarily speechless. Any words of gratitude felt utterly inadequate at this moment. I looked at the woman before me, only in her mid-20s. She was upright and full of righteous conviction, though she usually appeared quite authoritative. Now that she'd shed her homeroom teacher attire, she revealed herself to be a genuinely lovely young woman, her eyes curved with warmth, her smile gentle. The adorable her patted my shoulder at that moment, saying why bother with these things, and that when I get into Tsinghua or Peking University in the future, she could bask in the glory for half her life. With that, she pushed me into the bathroom again. A soft pink towel was shoved into my hands. She ruffled my hair and told me to hurry up with my shower, promising to take me out for a big meal later, the figure turning to leave. My birth mother, more like a mom. The day the results came out, my phone was bombarded with calls. The people who contacted me the most were my biological father and mother. From the very beginning, my biological father didn't expect Albert to score high. But a score of 180 was truly embarrassing for a well-known entrepreneur like him, especially since Albert had filled out all the answer sheets, especially after his grades were leaked online. Some people joked that if you brought a panda from Sichuan to take the exam and randomly filled out a few answer sheets, it would still score higher than Albert. Many business rivals also took the opportunity to kick him while he was down, calling to feign sympathy and asking if he needed help contacting some intelligence assessment agencies. In a fit of anger, my biological father thought of me. Since childhood, my academic performance has never been a cause for concern. No matter what, my IQ would still be somewhat higher than Albert's, so he called me first, pretending to care and asking how I was doing, but I didn't pay her any attention, as I was in the kitchen learning to cook from the boss. After the sixth rib was burnt to a crisp, she took off her apron, clapped her hands nonchalantly, and said, "We're not cut out for this track. You'd better start researching how to order the cheapest and most cost-effective takeout from today onwards." It was at this moment that a childhood friend sent me a message. She told me that Kathy scored 610 on the college entrance exam, nearly 3 times higher than Albert. The birth mother was proudly showing off in front of the birth father. The next second, the admission offices of Tsinghua and Peking universities called them. Only then did they realize I was this year's provincial top scorer. At that moment, the birth father was the first to hold his head high in triumph. He said, "I knew it. My child, Jack's offspring, couldn't possibly be intellectually deficient." This time, when they mentioned me again, what came to mind was no longer the half of my bloodline they despised. When my biological father started reaching out to me, my biological mother also caught on. She wanted to send me a message but realized she had been blocked, and while she was still blaming me for being emotionally cold and failing to understand her, my biological father managed to re-add me on WeChat by throwing money at the problem. Suddenly, Kathy, who scored 610 points, didn't seem so appealing anymore. This time, I became the object of their competition, especially after they found out I was going to have a live interview broadcast nationwide. That evening, my biological mother called my homeroom teacher. "Nora, the college entrance exams have been over for so long. Why haven't you come back?" As a girl, staying at someone else's place all this time. Your mother worries. This time, I cut her off directly, glancing at the Lamborghini parked downstairs. A sudden wave of malice rose in my heart. Mrs. Song, I said, Mr. Smith has already come personally to pick me up in his car, yet here you are still playing the emotional card. Thinking a few words would make me come to you on my own, that's really too much of a fantasy. Her voice faltered, then turned sharp and trembling. What did you just call me, Mrs. Song? Is there a problem? My voice carried a hint of amusement. I've already signed the waiver relinquishing my inheritance rights, and I've also given up my status as your heir. Between us, we were always strangers to begin with. That day, she hung up the phone with a scream. By the time she chased after me in her car, I had already been taken to a banquet by my biological father. Why, over the past 2 years, this was the only time she had been at a disadvantage since her biological father brought Albert home. She could barely control her emotions, almost frantically questioning the homeroom teacher. She said, she used to be closer to me, when we were almost divorced. She said she would stay with her mom. How could she go help Jack now? No idea. Maybe it's because you didn't go through with the divorce and didn't raise the child either. What the real reason is, so hard to guess, the homeroom teacher said, shrugging. Good babies left outside are first come, first served. You were too slow, Ms. Sarah. Hearing this, the biological mother grew even more frantic, shouting that she would file a complaint against the homeroom teacher. Go ahead, vote however you want. Nothing can change the fact that I produced the top scorer in the province. Ha 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 ha, who would have thought that at such a young age, I could achieve such glorious results. It's all because I have a keen eye for talent and know how to cherish good students. Every bit of this is what I deserve. Ha 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 ha. Just as my biological mother was about to explode with anger at the homeroom teacher, my biological father and I were sitting at the dining table, calmly negotiating. I heard that the day after tomorrow, someone from the central authorities will come to interview you, he said, fingers lightly tapping the table as he confidently laid out his terms. I can give you 1 million, we'll attend the interview together. He is now desperate to regain the face lost by Albert. The official account under his company has already started shamelessly riding on the hype of the corporate heiress being the provincial top scorer. At this moment, he sits across from me, exuding confidence as he lays out his terms. Hearing this, I laughed and said, 5% of the company's shares for Albert, but only 1 million for me. Mr. Smith, being this stingy, you really didn't need to put on such a generous act. Hearing this, his eyelid twitched, seeming to realize I was no longer easy to control. He lowered his voice and asked, what do you want, Nora? I'll do my best to satisfy you. I want you to amend the agreement, to make your illegitimate child Nora disappear and return the inheritance rights to you, I said, my smile unwavering as I looked at him. The next second, a sharp shattering sound erupted from outside the door. Albert burst into the private room, sending the dishes on the table crashing to the ground. Fuck you, Nora, you bitch. My parents were in love freely. It's your mom who was the mistress. And you're the bastard child, all along. He had believed that I had taken everything from him, robbing him of the privileged life he should have had for the first 15 years. Hearing me call him a bastard now only fueled his rage further, and he stormed in to confront me face to face. This wasn't the first time. Over the years, Albert hated nothing more than being reminded that he was an illegitimate child, even after moving into the Smith family, even as his life became more affluent. He still couldn't control the sensitivity and arrogance within him, so he particularly resents me, hates me for having what he lacks. Clearly, it was my birth mother who wouldn't let him in, yet he only dares to hate me. When he first arrived, he spread rumors throughout the grade, saying I was promiscuous and incorrigible, which was why my own father kicked me out of the house. Although the teachers and classmates around me trusted my character, but as the rumors spread more intensely, they still affected my life, so I chose a day when I was full and had energy, and after being publicly pointed at, I ran crying to the school rooftop, in front of the entire school who came to watch the spectacle. I cried hysterically, crying. I called out the names and student IDs of those who spread rumors about me, demanding to know why they would slander me. Was their goal to drive me to my death with their lies? Still in tears, I knelt and kowtowed to Albert, who was hidden in the crowd, watching me with smug delight as I became a laughingstock. I pleaded, please, I beg you, your mother came between my parents' marriage when my mother had just become pregnant with me. You're only half a year younger than me. Later, She used her life to force my father to take you away. Now, my father is already yours. Can't you just let me go? Once, I was the brightest star in the school, the undisputed heiress. I am intelligent, kind, and of noble birth. But now, I am gaunt, pitiful, and desperate, kneeling before a bastard. People love to watch such scenes, to see a pearl covered in dust, a flawless jade tainted. I know that with that one kneel, all my dignity will shatter, but I can barely go on living. What does dignity matter? That time it blew up into a huge incident. The news that Albert was an illegitimate child spread throughout the campus the next day. Afterwards, the homeroom teacher found me with lingering fear, saying I could come directly to her if I faced any difficulties in the future. I deliberately acted tough at the time, saying I was just toying with those people. They were as dumb as pigs and no match for me at all. Upon hearing this, the homeroom teacher looked at me with reddened eyes. Just as I realized I'd misspoken and was about to lower my head to apologize, she suddenly pulled me into a tight embrace. This emotional older sister's voice trembled as she said, "At such a young age, this shouldn't be something you have to think about." After that incident, I promised my homeroom teacher that I would no longer try to handle everything on my own and would seek her help immediately if anything happened. However, no one at school would dare to bully me anymore. Perhaps it was because I had lowered my pride completely, or perhaps it was because teenagers at that age still had a sense of justice. Everyone was aware of my situation, under pressure from the biological father. The school did not severely punish Albert, only making examples of a few who helped spread the rumors, but privately, Albert was isolated. He was even beaten several times in sacks off campus, until he had to be escorted by bodyguards to and from school to avoid further beatings. Yet the inerasable label of being an illegitimate child followed him, becoming his nightmare. Now, I'm bringing up the fact that he's a bastard again. He couldn't hold back at all, completely forgetting his biological father's instruction to wait outside. Seeing this, I just looked at my biological father mockingly and said, "He doesn't resemble you much. Have you checked the paternity?" I said, "He's a bit like a wild boar, relying solely on instinct to use violence and hardly ever using his brain. If you still insist on handing your company over to someone like this, then you must have lost your mind." The words were cutting. My biological father had basked in glory for half his life, and apart from in front of my mother, when had he ever been humiliated like this in public? I stood up to leave as soon as I finished speaking. Albert, standing nearby, was still clamoring for a fight. Perhaps he truly was a bit slow. My earlier hints had been so blatant, yet he still hadn't caught on, instinctively resorting to violence as the solution to everything. This is utterly humiliating. I cast a mocking glance at my biological father, whose face flushed red and then paled before he finally raised his arm and slapped Albert across the face, sending him sprawling to the side. This time, however, my father's gaze didn't turn to his son. It landed on me instead. "Nora," he said, "you've changed from before." Indeed, I have. After ceasing to love them, I realized they were nothing special after all. So-called adults, when confused, can be absurd to the point of being laughable. This is truly embarrassing. I was the top scorer in the college entrance exam, with a bright future ahead. Getting entangled with them is really beneath me. Perhaps the momentary emotion on my face gave my biological father a false sense of hope. As he made a final attempt to persuade me, he said, "Albert is still your brother after all. Nora, I promise you can join the company in the future. Though he's foolish, he's very obedient. As long as you're willing to help him, he won't do too badly." The sound of that abacus was so loud I couldn't help but chuckle. Turning around, my gaze shifted between his and Albert's swollen faces, deliberately avoiding his words as I sighed with genuine amazement. "So, you two actually took a paternity test? That shouldn't be right." I lowered my head, frowning in deep thought, utterly perplexed, until the answer suddenly dawned on me. Albert turned out like this. Could it be he takes after his biological mother? "Mr. Smith, your taste is quite unique." After this heartfelt compliment, I couldn't resist patting my biological father's shoulder and giving him a thumbs up. Ignoring his stormy expression, I turned away with light, cheerful steps. Behind him, Albert was still roaring in frustration. Even now, he couldn't understand the situation. "Why did you hit me, Dad? How could you just let that little bitch walk away?" "Shut up. How did I end up with such a stupid son?" This time, his biological father no longer indulged Albert. Lowering his voice, he spoke angrily. "If you had even a shred of competence, I wouldn't have had to bow my head to Nora. When I got home, the homeroom teacher was still waiting downstairs. I asked her if it was because my biological mother had caused trouble for her. She fanned herself to ward off mosquitoes while speaking with a smile. Nothing much, just wanted to show my face outside more often. Let everyone see what the provincial top scorer's mentor looks like, I thought. I must have caused her trouble after all. In the days to come, my parents might come to pester her endlessly, but the homeroom teacher waved his hand dismissively. What's there to fear? Your teacher will fight alongside you. Yet the following 2 days were unexpectedly calm. My biological father didn't come to persuade me again, but sent jewelry through someone else. From my favorite brand. Before I turned 15, I received this exact gift from my biological father every year on my birthday. And now, it has been brought before me once more, even though it can no longer please me, yet people are always like this, rarely offering help in times of need, but eager to add flowers to the brocade, as if in deliberate competition. My birth mother's gift soon arrived as well. It was a gown. Prepared for my upcoming interview, perhaps sensing my deliberate distancing, her strong self-esteem ultimately prevented her from seeking me out again. She only sent someone to relay a message, saying that if I was willing, we could meet. I was not willing and rather enjoyed the peace. The day finally came for the interview. My homeroom teacher accompanied me to the studio, only to find the two of them standing neatly in front of me, dressed in splendor, meticulously groomed. As soon as they saw me arrive, they both stepped forward in unison. They exchanged sharp, venomous glances after accidentally bumping into each other. If you want to argue, take it outside. Don't lose your minds here regardless of the occasion. I interrupted them before they could speak. My parents' expressions instantly darkened, especially my mother. Her gaze fell on the intimate way my homeroom teacher and I were arm in arm, and as if pricked by a needle, she quickly looked away. Yet she couldn't suppress the bitterness in her words. So these days you've been avoiding me just to spend time with your teacher? How ironic. You've never been this close to me. Anyone would think you two were mother and daughter, and here I am, still alive. Her tone was half sharp, half aggrieved. On her averted face, the rims of her eyes bore a damp redness that couldn't be pressed away. In the past, my heart always ached for her, but now, her tears can no longer become weapons to hurt me. I simply spoke calmly. I'm still alive too, yet Ms. Sarah, you still went ahead and became someone else's mother. A single sentence, like a pebble tossed into water, it sent out huge ripples, yet the air remained so silent. She turned her head in disbelief, her wet, red eyes widening. I saw the shock in her gaze. This was the first time she'd heard such biting words from me. I thought she would go mad, would grab and tear at me like she did when arguing with her biological father. But she just stood there dazed for a moment, then took 2 steps forward before breaking down uncontrollably into sobs. Tears soaked her entire face, smearing the delicate makeup she had applied. She had always been so proud, never breaking down like this in front of others, but now she was wailing, her hands on my shoulders, shaking me weakly as she asked, why, didn't you used to care for me the most? You were so kind, willing to endure any hardship for me. How can you really hate me now? At the very beginning, it was you who said you understood me, that you'd always support me. I just neglected you for a while. I'll make it up to you. Why couldn't you just wait? Still crying, she reached out and pounded on my chest, like a child throwing a tantrum for not getting candy. Yes, I was the one who first promised to support her forever, back then. My mother had just been pulled out of a web of lies and forced to face the truth, discovering that the marriage she thought had been happy for 15 years had actually been rotten from the very beginning. At that time, she did nothing but fight with my biological father or spend her days crying in front of me, endlessly pouring out her sorrows. Thus, as a teenager whose worldview was not yet fully formed, I was passively made into her emotional pillar. She made me swear not to betray her and to stand united with her against a common enemy. A mother's tears naturally have the power to wound a daughter's heart. All I could do was hold her and swear to her over and over again, like a machine. She spoke of hating her biological father, forever loyal to her oath, but my words about wanting to protect her came from the heart, only. At that time, she was completely drowned in sorrow and couldn't hear my voice. Then one day, Uncle Frank reached out to her. That night, she rarely smiled at me on her own initiative. She said, Nora, you don't want Mom to spend her whole life being bullied and wronged like this, do you? Mom wants to do something, and it might make things harder for you. For Mom's sake, would you be willing? At that time, I thought she had finally made up her mind to get a divorce and end all this absurdity. I genuinely felt happy for her and said that if I got divorced, I would choose to be with her, but I was overthinking it. Deep down, what my birth mother truly desired was still for my birth father to wake up, repent, and grovel at her feet to apologize. She didn't want to give up on this marriage, nor did she want to compromise her own dignity. She chose to wrong me, and now, she stands before me, weeping uncontrollably, only to let go of my hand as if scalded upon seeing the faintly mocking smile at the corner of my lips. Stepping back in fear as she speaks, "Nora, you're taking revenge on me," her trembling, tearful voice rings out. "It seems she has truly realized," she said. "Daughter, you don't love me anymore." Hearing this, I reached out and gently brushed away the strands of hair clinging to her cheek. I replied, "One must first fill their stomach before having the strength to speak of love. But I was starved to death a long, long time ago, psychologically, spiritually. Without love, it feels hollow and empty." The dressing room that day was given to Ms. Sarah first, after all. She is also a noble lady. Making a scene in public would be undignified. It's just unclear why, even though she only went in to tidy up and touch up her makeup, she stayed inside unusually long, until the studio staff urged me. I knocked and entered. Seeing the startled eyes of my birth mother, something was amiss. Without showing any reaction, I first scanned the dressing room, finally catching a glimpse of the green skirt hem as my birth mother shielded someone's exit. "Mom." I suddenly called out to stop her. The moment she turned back with delight, I asked, "Should I wear the dress you gave me?" Either way, she answered somewhat absent-mindedly, nothing to say to me. This time, she chose silence, so after she left, I retrieved the dress she had custom-made for me from the dressing room and, after some searching, found the faint scratches on the straps. The dress was tailored to fit tightly, perfectly accentuating my curves, which, in turn, left little room for wearing much underneath. Moreover, the dress was heavily adorned with jewels. If I were to wear it, the shoulder straps would likely snap under the strain within 20 minutes, leaving me exposed. At that time, I should have been live streaming. Boring. I looked at the dress in my hand and the hidden pinhole camera, silently curling my lips in disdain. That day, I still wore the same white dress I had on during the exam. Seeing this, my birth mother averted her eyes, hesitating as if she wanted to say something but held back. My biological father cut me off directly. This time, his offer was even more tempting. "I can give you 2% of the company's shares, but you must support your younger brother and also." "No need," I interrupted him. "I was just teasing you earlier. I already have enough money for college. So this trick of yours won't work on me." With that, I stepped onto the stage under his furious gaze. The biological parents could only sit and watch from below. When the host asked me to share fragments of my past life, I turned and clicked to play the prepared video on the big screen, as if someone's mocking laughter came from the shadows. When the video started playing, it showed my classmates' heartfelt congratulations for my success. The composite video Albert had prepared was never shown. A scuffle was heard from the backstage, and soon, the homeroom teacher aggressively escorted Albert out, pulling out a phone to call the police directly. The biological father couldn't stay seated any longer. He was about to stand up and stop the homeroom teacher, but then he heard the host ask me what I wanted to do after becoming the provincial top scorer, to which I replied with a smile, "I want to make sure no one ever kicks me in the stomach again." The biological father's legs suddenly went weak. The next moment, the phone screen lit up, flooded with frantic messages from her biological father. "Are you insane? Family scandals shouldn't be aired in public. Why would you say these things in front of media leaders? If the Smith family conglomerate's reputation is damaged, it affects the entire company. You're the Smith family's heiress. What good does this do you, Nora?" "Shut your mouth," but I just glanced at it, then calmly spoke into the camera. "To be honest, before the college entrance exams, my parents made me sign a voluntary agreement to renounce my inheritance rights because they wanted to leave their assets to their illegitimate child and adopted daughter." Upon hearing illegitimate child, Nora on the other end seemed to hit a switch and started squirming again, only to be smacked on the forehead by the boss, who told her to behave. The scene was quickly descending into chaos, and the host broke out in a sweat. But when she turned and saw that the live stream's viewer count had surpassed 100,000, her whole demeanor brightened with joy. My biological father in the audience had already straightened up, but I calmly took out those two agreements and displayed them to the camera. After that, I continued speaking. Actually, that day, I wanted to ask them for some meal money, but they were too busy arguing about whose child was more outstanding and refused to give me any. I was so hungry that I resorted to some measures, only to be kicked by my younger brother Albert. He said my mother was the other woman, even though legally my parents were married, and he was 6 months younger than me. He claimed his mother was the true love, the rightful one, and I was just a bastard. That kick was really hard. While solving complex math problems, I had to clutch my stomach and gasp in pain between equations. But it was useless, even though there were no visible wounds. It felt like my internal organs had been kicked to the point of damage, aching inside as if rotting and festering. It must be because I was starved so thin that I felt pain so easily. At that time, I thought to myself, once I become independent, I will make sure to nourish myself until I'm plump and fair, and never let anyone kick my stomach again. Moreover, I will use these experiences to remind myself to remain loyal and chaste, not to swallow everything indiscriminately. Lest I give birth to a child who only knows violence and not reason, who would come to demand repayment from me. The audience erupted in applause, while my biological father, restrained by security from approaching the stage, glared at me with eyes full of hatred. Social media is now flooded with posts. Recently, their company forcibly hijacked my trending topic, which was dug up, and the public opinion backlash has turned against them. It just so happens that this is a live interview by the central media, and they can't take it down. The Smith family conglomerate is likely to suffer significant losses because of this, but what does that have to do with me? I don't even have the right to inherit, so why should I worry about them? As for my birth mother, seeing my birth father in such a sorry state, for the first time, she didn't gloat beside him, because she knew I would soon mention her, facing the camera. I didn't bring up her indifference toward me, nor her cold detachment. I simply smiled faintly and said, actually, I just realized something. I'm not as composed as I thought I was. At least half an hour ago, when I discovered my stepsister had ruined my clothes, trying to make me expose myself in front of the media, and my birth mother was still covering for her, my heart couldn't help but ache. Mom, meeting her fearful gaze, I called her that one last time and said, just now. I still wanted to give myself one final chance to accept you, yet she chose Kathy, fully aware that Kathy's presence there was ill-intentioned, but still deceived herself, opting to cover for her without asking what had happened. No, no, she said, her voice trembling. Kathy said she hadn't done anything yet. I just didn't want to ruin your mood again. Without listening to her further excuses, my expression changed, and I turned to face the camera, speaking solemnly. Before the entire nation, I hereby report that Frank, the CEO of Frank Corporation, along with his daughter Kathy and Albert, has engaged in fraud, attempting to embezzle the assets of the Smith family's Song Corporation. The Frank family was indeed wealthy for a time in the early years, but by the time it reached Frank's hands, it was nothing more than an empty shell of a company, overwhelmed by a mountain of debt. Frank had been robbing Peter to pay Paul. This was precisely the reason Kathy's birth mother abandoned both father and daughter. Frank had long set his sights on my family. He originally planned to personally seduce my mother, but at that time, my parents' marriage was still intact, and she showed little interest in him. However, an opportunity soon presented itself, and at the same time, he realized his innocent and harmless daughter could be more useful. The screen behind me continuously flashed photos of Albert and Kathy meeting privately for dates and rendezvousing with Frank, along with records of Frank's fraudulent activities over the years. This information was actually quite easy to obtain. I only spent $50,000, and the private investigator uncovered everything for me. Yet those two high-end mighty adults, always so confident in their own judgment, lived in a world of sweet words, never suspecting a thing. I smiled and said, actually, father's illegitimate son and mother's adopted daughter have been together all along. They persuaded my parents to make me give up my inheritance rights and then work together to drain their assets. The funny thing is, my parents still kept comparing and competing with each other over them. At this moment, the biological father, snapping back to reality, rushed straight to Albert and started attacking him. You fool, good thing I kept a backup plan and only gave you 5% of the shares to prevent a thankless wretch like you from ruining the family, and you actually betrayed your own father. What kind of father are you? For over a decade, you wouldn't even let me come home. You're less like family to me than Kathy, At least she understands and cares about me. By now, Albert had dropped all pretenses and shouted back at his father. No one expected Albert's true feelings to be like this. The biological father, furious, clutched his chest, taking a long moment to catch his breath. While they were tangled in their fight, the biological mother's legs gave way, and she collapsed to the ground, her face deathly pale. I watched as she took out her phone, nervously dialing Kathy's number over and over, but not a single call went through. After the interview ended, I was escorted out by my homeroom teacher. My birth mother anxiously followed behind. She apologized to me. "Nora, I was wrong, come back, and I'll give you everything." She reached out and grabbed my arm, her eyes welling up with tears. I looked at her and spoke calmly. "Ms. Sarah, you bought that fund Kathy recommended to you, didn't you?" The last trace of color drained from her face, and her hand went limp, releasing its grip. "From what I know, she invested nearly 90% of her assets in that fund." It was Frank and Kathy who kept reassuring her, especially Kathy, who nestled in her arms, coquettishly saying, "Godmother, I want to take care of you when you're old. How could I lie to you? Look, even my dad is very pleased with you. If only you were really my mother." That's what we all think. In the end, the birth mother gritted her teeth and invested all the money she had. That fund was likely already illegally transferred abroad by Frank. Now, she probably only has the house and 2 cars left at home, having caused such a big mess. Her uncle's side would no longer take her in. "So, since you've already given everything to them, what's left to give me?" As I spoke, I brushed off her hand that was clutching mine and turned away to run toward my own future. To prevent them from bothering me, I went ahead and attended Tsinghua University summer camp early, then moved into the school dormitory ahead of schedule. From then on, I immersed myself in studies, paying no attention to external affairs. The year I successfully got into the PhD program, my biological father reached out to me. Back then, after discovering that Albert had been taking his money to give to Frank and his daughter, he cut off Albert's financial support in a fit of anger and confined him at home. Over the years, the conflicts between them had continued to escalate. Albert has always harbored resentment over his mother's death, blaming his biological father for inaction. Now, his biological father refuses to give him money to spend. Over the years, he has been constantly scheming, always trying to seize power. In reality, the Smith family group's assets have shrunk by more than half in recent years. The biological father, as an entrepreneur, has already tarnished his reputation and lost public trust. Yet, Albert refused to settle down, considering him as his heir. The father endured repeatedly, still supporting him in an attempt to re-educate him. In the end, their conflicts erupted. Albert pushed his father down the stairs, leaving him partially paralyzed, while Albert ended up in prison. Now, the father is desperate to contact me, bedridden and unable to manage his affairs. His business is gradually being devoured by restless distant relatives. "Come back, I'll give you the company. You're my most accomplished child, and it's only right that you inherit what's mine." He lamented over there, at times saying he was too old and couldn't manage anymore, at other times regretting that he had been blind in the past. The once dominant person is now trying to soften my heart with such a display of weakness. "But, I've calculated the current market value of the Smith family conglomerate. My suggestion is to declare bankruptcy before taking on more debt," I said with a smile into the phone. "Sorry, Mr. Smith, but you know my profession is government-backed. There will be plenty of good days ahead. I'm not keen on slaving away to save your half-dead company. Of course, I'll treat you exactly the way you treated me back then." After a moment's thought, I added kindly, "How about this? I'll find you a caregiver, though I can't guarantee they won't have a habit of kicking old men." The phone was angrily hung up in frustration. I had just enjoyed 2 days of peace when I received another large transfer, this time from my birth mother. All these years, she had been trying to recover the assets she was swindled out of. Unfortunately, Kathy and Frank left the country too quickly. By the time they were caught, most of that money had already been squandered. On the day Kathy was imprisoned, her biological mother still went to see her. The adopted daughter, who had always been poised and proper in front of her, suddenly spat in her face. "Didn't you say you treated me like your own daughter? What's the big deal about spending a little of your money? You old hag, with your kind, you still want to be my stepmother. Are you even worthy?" After that day, her biological mother never visited her again. She became the laughingstock of her social circle, with everyone saying that after all these years, She had been played like a fool by a young girl, lost her promising biological daughter, and now was left with nothing, neither family nor money. She stopped arguing with anyone, but over the years, she kept sending me money, after the last transfer. I received her call, her voice choked with sobs on the other end of the line. Daughter, I've given you everything I have. Can you still turn back and look at me? Mom misses you so much. Nora, I've been thinking a lot about the past lately. How obedient and sensible you were. How much you loved me. Sorry, I looked at the message from my homeroom teacher on my phone and directly interrupted Ms. Sarah, I said. My mentor got promoted, and I still need to attend the celebration gathering. I don't have time to talk much with you. That card, when she needs it for her retirement in the future, I'll return it to her on time. As for more, I can't give it anymore. After all, from the moment I left, I swore that from now on, I would give all my love to myself. I will unconditionally be good to myself, trust myself, and help myself, walking all the way to a great future, being my own eternal lover. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts?